In today's high interest rate market, do you know how to navigate the transaction so you can actually end up at the closing table? You either need to sell your home or you're anxious to buy your new home. We're going to talk about this today. Hi, my name is Gabi Victoria, realtor with eXp Realty, serving Austin and the surrounding areas, and I invited one of my preferred lenders, Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle Wilkins. I'm with Guarantee Rate, and I've been in the mortgage business over 20 years. I've seen these interest rate markets go up and down, and here to help guide along the way.
First, we're gonna focus on the 2-1 rate buy down, correct?
Right.
And then we're gonna break it down from the buyer perspective and the seller's perspective.
Right.
What is a 2-1 buy down rate?
Right. Basically, what's happening is the seller is paying a fee on the buyer's behalf to be able to reduce their interest rate by either 1% or 2% on estimated rate. If it was at 7.875 today, then the buyer would pay 5.875 for the first year and 6.875 for the second year. So that's going to kind of help the buyer get through this high rate environment and then refinance down the road should they decide to stay in the home for a longer period of time.
We've been talking about it and I've created some videos, but very limited information. Now, I have the expert here to explain it better and to make sure I'm not messing things up. Let's talk about the buyer's perspective, shed a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that in today's high interest rate market that a buyer works with a lender that works with them as a consultant. It's very important, as you know, to get pre-qualified before you purchase a home and working with a lender and making sure that you understand all the aspects that are needed. If a buyer, maybe they need closing costs paid or they need help buying the rate down. It's important to work with a lender that knows how to structure the loan and give you advice on the best way to proceed forward when you're making your offer.
How much money do I need to buy the rate down, and can I buy the rate down, or who is allowed to buy the rate down? Because buyers are also limited of where they can spend the money.
That's a great question. Back in 2010, the government passed laws with the Dodd-Frank Act that limited how much a buyer can pay towards their discount fees and a certain amount of fees that they want to pay. In the past, a buyer could buy their rate down and pay 3 or 4 points if they wanted to get a lower rate. And now with the regulations that have passed, a buyer's limited on what they can pay. And so that's why you hear a lot about the 2-1 buy down and different options that the buyer's asking the seller to pay on their behalf, because even if the buyer wanted to buy their rate down, they're limited on how much they're allowed to spend.
That limit is set based on the price point of the home, or is it based on the down payment?
Just depending on the loan amount, that's going to determine how much the buyer can pay in a specific amount of fees.
Let's give them an example as well. Obviously, you need to talk to Michelle to explain it in detail based on your specific circumstances. But let's say a buyer puts down 5%. What are the rules around that?
I think a good general rule is knowing that if a buyer is on a conventional loan, let's say they're to put 5% down, then the seller's going to be limited to 3% of the sales price to be able to contribute towards closing costs, buying the rate down, a 2-1 buy down. All those type of fees go in the same bucket. It's a good idea to consider if the buyer puts 10% or more down, then the seller can contribute up to 6%. But I think on a general rule across the board, 3% of the sales price is a good guide to use.
When it comes to the rate buy downs or 2-1 buy downs, what would be the number one question that a buyer should ask a lender or pay attention to?
The first thing that a buyer should think about when they're talking to a lender is knowing what the lender's license number is. Part of this goes back to 2010 when all our regulations changed and we went from state licenses to federal licenses. When you're talking to different lenders and you look at their license number, the higher the number, the less experience they're going to have. And that doesn't mean that somebody that's new in the business doesn't have good experience if they've done a lot of transactions. So I think the most important thing for a buyer to talk to the lender about is being forthcoming with all their information, because a good mortgage lender is going to act as a consultant to them to be able to guide them to say, okay, how long do you plan on being in this home? How much money do you have to contribute towards the purchase transaction? And when I say contribute towards that, I'm talking about your down payment, your closing costs, all the things associated with the transaction, so that I can help best guide you on, okay, Let's look at a buy down. Let's look at having your closing costs paid. So that's what I think is really nice about when a seller's doing a contract with a buyer, all those fees go into one bucket, and then that makes it much easier.
As I mentioned before, everybody's situation might be a little bit different. We're trying to provide enough information right now so when you're ready to purchase a home and start the lending process, you have the contact person to go to, you have some basic information or something that might trigger some other questions that you can go and ask a lender. Feel free to reach out to either of us, and then we connect you with the right person and talk to you in private about your specific needs. We kind of covered the buyers. And does the seller need to be concerned about anything when it comes to rate buy downs? Usually new construction companies, they offer rate buy downs. So there are so many incentives, and it's very hard for resale to compete with that. How can we promote and come with the creative ideas to promote the listings?
One of the things that maybe not gets talked about a lot is a seller needs to get pre-qualified to buy a home as well. And I think when the seller goes through that pre-qualification process, they may have a better understanding and maybe open to different possibilities when it comes to pricing their home when they go to list it. So I think working with someone like yourself, Gabby, and understanding the market as a seller, that's going to help them price their home. On a general rule, as a seller, if you can price your home at a home that would appraise with a 3% seller contribution towards closing costs, I think that's putting your best foot forward. And I think that would cover a 2-1 buy down, that would cover closing costs that need to be paid, maybe on a veteran, that's going to help cover some of the fees associated with VA loans.
You mentioned that the seller might need to be pre-approved as well. Well, that is in case if they want to buy a different home.
Right.
In case you just want to pack up and travel the world and live a little bit here and there, then you're in good shape. Or if you want to rent somewhere, you don't need to pre-qualify for a different loan. But it's a very good point that a lot of people, they make the move, either upsize or downsize or move out of state, but they still want to buy a different home. So having a conversation with the lender to cover their options or kind of know and be prepared, so they don't sell their home and maybe they, for whatever reason, they don't qualify for another one.
Another really good important thing to note is that once your home is listed on the market in the MLS system, that you're no longer eligible to maybe refinance your home, to maybe do a renovation loan before you put it on the market. So let's say that maybe there's some things that you want to update in your home, but the minute your home goes on the MLS, you have to wait 6 months before you can refinance the home as a primary residence. You could look at some things that maybe you want to renovate the home, but maybe you don't want to do it right away. You could also get some quotes and show a buyer like, hey, here's some things you could do to renovate the home too. So those are some other options they could look at.
Just to keep it simple for the seller's perspective, number one, let's connect if you're thinking about selling your home. We need to discuss what is your plan. Maybe it's the best time for you to sell right now. Maybe you need to slow it down a little bit and look into more detail and come up with a plan. Pricing of your home, it's always key, more so now in this a little bit slower market. Having a better understanding and a more open mind for creative ideas and marketing ideas, that's when I come in, and that's why I'm talking to amazing lenders that have great information. We can utilize that to sell your home faster, so we can be competitive. We covered a lot of information right here. The main point that I got out of it: buyers, you cannot buy down your own rate. Sellers, you need to be a little bit more flexible and open-minded to stay competitive in this market and help out the buyer as well, because they're a little bit restricted right now with the higher interest rates, but there's still plenty of buyers out there that they are wanting and willing to buy a property and buy their homes. We need to put the information out there and help them, and we all need to be more creative, and that's when expertise for someone who's been in the deals and the transactions and seeing the market all over and the interest rates comes in handy.
Well, I think it speaks to you too, Gabby. I mean, doing your homework and wanting to be very knowledgeable in this high rated market. I commend you too for wanting to know all the information so that you are the expert in your field, so that you're guiding your buyers and sellers in the right way too. I think you'd be really great working with Gabby. I think you'd be very impressed with her, and I think you'd be very lucky to work with her to help you get to that closing table.
If you're ready or you are just curious, feel free to reach out to either of us. I will put our information at the end of this video and in the comments. We're here to help you, guide you through anything that you might want to do. And sometimes you just need a different perspective and ideas so you can make an educated decision.